Our first presenter is Dr. Robert Harrison, Public Health Medical Officer with the California Department of Public Health, Occupational Health Branch, and Clinical Professor at the University of California, San Francisco in the Division of Occupational and Environmental Medicine. And he'll be speaking on lung disease caused by engineered stone.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you. It's my first meeting, and I don't know why I haven't been coming since the beginning. This is an amazing group, so thank you for the opportunity to talk about this. I was grateful to Dr. Murray for touching on this issue of silicosis caused by engineered stone. And the problem starts here. So this is the biggest box store in the United States, and I tried to keep it secret, but if you look in the upper right-hand corner, it's like not so secret here, okay? But I don't know why it has to be secret. So the problem starts here, and it actually starts this morning when I was eating breakfast, and I was talking a little bit about this, and I realized I was eating my breakfast on an engineered stone countertop at the hotel. And I don't see any in this room right now, but it's pretty much everywhere. And you can tell this product because it's kind of very uniform. It's a really good product. It's stain resistant, it's chip resistant. I could spill lemon juice on the countertop at breakfast and it's not gonna stain. And if I bang my coffee cup against the edge, it's not gonna chip. So it's now the #1 consumer product for countertops in the United States. It didn't exist 25 years ago. When I updated my kitchen, I did granite or marble. Before that, when I first bought my house, I think I had tile. And my mother had linoleum or formica on her countertops. And then before that, it was probably wood, to be honest with you, that people had. And as far as I know, the world was good 2 or 3 generations ago with these countertops. So this is an artificial, man-made product. We love it. I honestly don't think there's going back right now. It's about 60 to 70% of the market. Here's a photo of what a worker does in one of these shops. This is taken by Earl Dotter, who's a fabulous photographer. And Earl actually had his kitchen redone. And he knew about this issue from a conversation we had, and he went out and took photos of the whole fabrication process. And what happens is, we order the countertop from Home Depot. Home Depot contracts with a fabrication installer. Okay, Home Depot doesn't do the installation themselves, or you could go into IKEA or Lowe's or another big box store, they'll do the same thing. So they have a group of contractors that does the fabrication. They'll come out to my house, they'll take measurements of my existing kitchen counter. They get a template. It can either be by hand or now they're doing it on computers. They'll go back to their shop, which is typically 3, 5, 10 workers, and it could be in a leased portion of a warehouse. And that fabricator will go to a wholesaler warehouse that stocks these products. It could be hundreds of thousands of square feet from all different manufacturers who have that product that I picked out at Home Depot sitting in a warehouse. They go with a truck, they bring it to their fabrication shop, and they do this. And they're immigrant workers, typically from Mexico, Guatemala, other Central American countries. And they cut out the sink opening, my little soap dispenser opening. They'll cut they make the longitudinal and horizontal cuts to my counter. Then they have to round it if I have a rounded shape, and then they'll put a border, they'll put an edging on it to finish it. And they'll use hand tools like this, and you'll notice this does not have any local exhaust ventilation on it. This is cut dry. You don't see any water here, right? And he's wearing a half-face match cartridge respirator, which if he's able to wear it 8 hours a day, it's a miracle, because this is really uncomfortable. And you can also see if he takes that respirator off, just how dusty this is. So the air levels of silica dust here are going to be off the chart. This is way over the 2016 OSHA permissible exposure limit, which is 50 micrograms per meter cube. Action limit is 25 micrograms per meter cube. In some of these shops, the data, which I'll share with you in a moment, show 10, 15, 20 times the PEL level in these shops. And you can also see there's a lot of bystander exposure. So even if he's not doing the work himself, there's a guy 10 feet away. We've had OSHA inspectors come in and put monitors on themselves, right, just to get background ambient, and they're above the PEL. So this is an old slide, but the year-to-year growth in this product is estimated about 5% annually. Worldwide, this is probably a $25 billion market. I don't have great estimates in the United States. It's probably a $3 to $5 billion market, at least in the United States. They go by various names. The Kleenex, the brand name that a lot of people first know is Caesarstone, because that was the first product to hit the market. That's an Israeli manufacturer. They have a manufacturing facility on a kibbutz in Israel. They got the first patent on this product to manufacture it from an Italian company, and they first started selling in Israel, which is where the first epidemic of this hit. The largest company in the world is Cosentino. It's a Spanish company. They have 16 lines to produce this in Almeria, Spain. And Cambria, which is the only US manufacturer. When I say US, it's an American company. They're located in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the Twin Cities, not far actually from where APHA will be next week. The Davis family are the owners. They're privately held. They're, the 50th wealthiest family in the United States. They founded Sun Country Airlines, a pretty big philanthropic group in the Twin Cities. Marty Davis is a large Trump supporter, if you look up the background of this family. But their Cambria is also another major manufacturer. So the problem here is, when it was patented in 1975 by an Italian engineer, it was the original patent, which I have, is 95% crushed fine silica sand combined with polyester resin binder and various pigments. And it's put under heat, compressed, and cooled. And then it's put in big boxes as 500-pound slabs, and it's shipped all around the world. And every place that it's gone, there's been an epidemic of silicosis. First in Israel with over 300 cases, Spain now with over, I think it's 300, I have to update this slide. Australia has over 300 cases now. And then China has over 250 cases. My Chinese colleague of mine, though, just recently told me she has over 1,000 cases in her own practice in Shanghai. And then in the United States, when I read the first publication in 2012, I was waiting for the first cases to emerge here. Published a blog with colleagues from the state health departments and NIOSH in 2014. Dr. Gary Friedman responded to that blog, to the NIOSH blog. It was like, wow, this was a lesson in the power of a blog. I didn't think anybody was going to read this. And Dr. Friedman wrote in, he said he has a case. We jointly published a case in the MMWR in 2015. That was the first US case. And that was a fabricator who worked in a Cosentino fabrication shop in Houston. He was on the upper right-hand slide there. That was from the New York Times when the OSHA 2000 silica standard was published. Then in California, we picked up the first case from a hospital discharge record. That's one of the ways in which we find cases. When everybody's hospitalized, you get a diagnosis. My group has access to all the hospital discharge data, and we found a young man who was discharged with silicosis from the hospital. If you have silicosis, you are really sick. And we got his medical records, talked to the next of kin. We found out he had actually been diagnosed with silicosis in 2013. I didn't know about it because nobody had ever reported it to the local or state health departments. This is a gap that we're just about to fix in California. His symptoms got worse. By the time he got referred to UCSF, my hospital, for a lung transplant evaluation. He was too sick, was not eligible, and he died of accelerated silicosis. This is not my typical silicosis that I've seen in my practice. What I've typically seen over the years is a 60 or 70-year-old man who has lung disease but is living a fairly normal life, may have some shortness of breath, may have some decreased lung capacity. These are the worst cases of silicosis I've ever seen. So somebody mentioned you wrote an article years ago. You might have been referring to Gawley, West Virginia, right? Gawley Bridge, West Virginia. We have now seen more cases in California than died at Gawley Bridge. We've seen close to 200 cases, and they're almost like the Gawley Bridge cases. That's how severe this lung disease is. And that's his chest X-ray. It's just a complete whiteout. It's really bad. We published a joint paper in 2019 with other colleagues from Washington, Colorado, and Texas. There were 18 cases here in total. And then the COVID pandemic hit. And I thought, okay, and then I was working 24/7 on COVID in the workplace. It turned out that this industry boomed during the COVID pandemic. They had actually trouble finding workers in these workshops because a lot of people were renovating their kitchens, it turned out. There was the home improvement industry really picked up. We have estimated that there are probably over 10,000 cases of undiagnosed silicosis in these workers, in over 10,000 establishments. And that's a conservative estimate. My group put together a list of about 700 of these companies in California. And the industry has told me, Dr. Bob, that's probably an underestimate by 200 or 300%. There's probably more like 2,000 or 3,000 in California. So I got to revise this. There are probably 20,000 of these little shops around the United States and at least 10,000 workers. We have a really good silica standard that's been on the books since 2016. But there's something different about this material. When I talk to workers, at the very beginning, they have told me this stuff is different. This stuff is like fine dust. When this is ground and cut, it creates really, really fine dust. And it turns out that when industrial hygiene studies have measured this, the particle size distribution is in fact much lower. And it's actually can be some in the nanomaterial range. And there's probably something different about the surface characteristics of this crystalline silica because of the polyester resin in which it's bound in. This is a paper that we published a couple of years ago, and this is the distribution of the action level and the permissible exposure limit. You can see on the left-hand side those little purple dots. Some of those are like way above the PEL, which is that flat line down at the bottom. About half the shops sampled had overexposures. All the workers are young, they're Latino, they're immigrants. Most of them have no insurance. Almost no one has filed workers' compensation claims. We can have a long discussion about why that is, but you're probably all shaking your head no, right? Literally only 5% have filed workers' comp. They're getting care through the public insurance system. In California, they're picked up by Medi-Cal under the Affordable Care Act, but that's a whole nother struggle getting them insured and getting them access to care. None of them have had medical screening that's required by the OSHA standard. Like literally no one has gone to the doctor and got a chest x-ray. In Australia, they have had a government-funded program to give free medical exams to everybody in the stone fabrication industry. And they're finding about a quarter of these workers have silicosis. So it's really, really a massive burden. Read our paper. We published the first 52 cases in August of 2023 with Dr. Fazio, a colleague at UCLA. She's one of my heroes. She's been seeing all these cases at the county hospital in LA. I'll skip through this data here. Sorry, no, you don't want me to skip it? Okay, I'm going back. Arturo wants to take a picture. I'll let him take a picture. Okay, good. No, but please, I'll send any of you this article. But you can see here, half of them are presenting first time to the ER. So they're not being picked up early. They're undocumented, uninsured, and unprotected. Dr. Murray was pointing this out in her earlier talk. And they present with terrible advanced disease. It's incurable. We now have 22 lung transplants that have happened, about 10% fatality. This is the epi curve from our paper in 2023. We did pass an emergency standard in California. So in California, our OSHA now can enforce anybody who cuts dry can get shut down immediately. Where our inspectors don't have to wait for air sampling to be done, because when we waited for air sampling, miraculously, the OSHA inspector would come back in 3 days and, oh, this product wasn't being used anymore. So they couldn't document the hazard. We got emergency rules. And let me just end. This is where I think, this is where I'm working right now. Australia banned this product as of July 1st, 2024, 3 months ago. They're banning it. And in Australia, manufacturers are marketing a whole host of different products that don't contain respirable crystalline silica. Are they completely safe? I am not sure. We need to get more toxicology studies done and alternatives analysis. But Caesarstone, which is where this started, right, in Israel, Caesarstone has an alternative that they're selling in Australia. It has amorphous silica, which is made out of crushed glass. It's much less toxic than respirable crystalline silica. Consumers in Australia are buying the same patterns and colors. It's silica-free. And I want to know, if they can do it in Australia, why can't I go into Home Depot and buy that product instead of the toxic one? And so, you know, just remember, I woke up like a month ago and I had a little epiphany. I said, wait a second. I trained in occupational health. I know about the hierarchy of controls. I need to talk about the hierarchy of controls. So we can't eliminate countertops. I don't think elimination is feasible. Everyone's going to want a countertop, but we can substitute. And so I think that's ultimately the answer here. And finally, just let me end. Anyone wants to talk more about the Chicago cases, I'll send you the article. There are 3 cases. They're being treated in the tertiary care center. But I'm sure if we have 200 cases in California, there are cases everywhere, but we don't know about them. So if anybody hears about a case, wants to talk to me more, the more national attention I can bring to this, we can bring to this together, we got to stop this, because there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of more cases out there. Thank you.